The anguish of the tall man. It was upon a dreary and fog-choked afternoon in November that I found myself once more in our familiar sitting room at 221B Baker Street. The yellow vapours swirled and writhed outside our window panes, creating such a gloom within that the electric light, which had of late been installed, was switched on, casting a harsh, modern glare upon the comfortable chaos of my friend's possessions. Sherlock Holmes himself, however, seemed impervious to the melancholy of the day. He was perched upon a stool before his chemical bench, a long glass pipette in his hand, his back curved in intense concentration over a malodorous concoction that was bubbling gently in a retort. "Watson, you are a medical man," he said without turning round. "What is your opinion on the long-term effects of aniline derivatives upon the corpuscles of the blood?" Before I could frame a reply to this abrupt and singular question, our quiet domestic scene was shattered by a commotion from the street below, followed by a thunderous knocking upon our front door that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. Mrs. Hudson, our long-suffering landlady, could be heard exchanging a few flustered words with a visitor, and then heavy, frantic footsteps pounded upon the stairs. The door flew open, and there stood upon our threshold a man of such extraordinary stature that he was forced to stoop to pass under the lintel. He must have stood a good 6 feet and 6 inches in his stockinged feet, with the broad shoulders and muscular development of a veritable giant. His face, which might have been handsome, was now a mask of utter desperation, pale and haggard, with wild, haunted eyes that darted about the room as if seeking some unseen pursuer. His breath came in ragged, tearing gasps, and his great hands opened and clenched at his sides. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" he panted, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I must see Mr. Holmes." "I am he," said my friend, rising from his stool and regarding the man with a keen, analytical gaze. "Pray, take a seat. You appear to be in some distress." Our visitor, however, seemed incapable of rest. He began to pace the length of our room, a caged lion in his agitation, his enormous frame seeming to shrink the familiar space to the size of a matchbox. "They told me you were the only one, the very last resort," he stammered, wringing his hands together with a force that made the knuckles crack. "It is a terrible position, Mr. Holmes, the most terrible position a man has ever found himself in." "Calm yourself, sir," Holmes said, his voice taking on that soothing yet authoritative tone he reserved for clients on the verge of collapse. "There is no trouble that cannot be lessened by a clear and methodical examination. You have come to me for help. To give that help, I must have the facts. Be seated and tell me everything." The man seemed to make a supreme effort to control himself. He lurched towards the armchair I had pushed forward, but instead of sitting, he gripped its back, his knuckles showing white. "It concerns my friend. No, my brother Archie," he cried out, his voice cracking with emotion. "Poor Archie, what are we to do? The police cannot know. They must never know. But the guilt, Mr. Holmes. The guilt is a physical thing. It is crushing the life from me." He struck his broad chest with a clenched fist. His eyes rolled upward in their sockets, and a ghastly pallor spread over his features. "He is lost. We are all lost." With a final despairing groan, the man's legs seemed to give way beneath him. He swayed for a moment, a great tree about to fall, and then crashed to the floor with a heavy, sickening thud. He lay there, a crumpled heap of humanity, utterly insensible. I rushed to his side at once, my medical instincts taking over. "He has fainted, Holmes. It is a profound syncope brought on by extreme mental agitation." I loosened his collar and felt for his pulse. It was faint and thready. As I was about to reach for the brandy, Holmes was already kneeling beside me. He did not look at the man's face, but rather at his hands. "Interesting, Watson," he murmured, pointing with the stem of his pipe. "Observe the calluses, not the rough, indiscriminate hardening of a labourer's hands, but the specific, water-worn calluses of an oarsman. And note the slight asymmetry in the muscular development of his forearms. He is, or was, a university stroke, and a very fine one at that. Cambridge, by the slight feathering on his left wrist. Their style is unmistakable. And his name, I fancy, is Henry Staunton." "How on earth could you know that?" I gasped, dumbfounded. "I make it my business to know such things," he replied, a glint of amusement in his eye. "Henry Staunton was the celebrated stroke of the Cambridge crew 3 years ago. His photograph was in every illustrated paper after they soundly thrashed Oxford at Mortlake. His prodigious height was his most remarked-upon feature. The papers dubbed him the Cambridge Giant. It seems our giant has fallen upon difficult times. Let us revive him, Watson, and discover what terrible secret has brought him so low." A Tale of Two Brothers. With the aid of smelling salts and a small measure of brandy, our client was soon restored to a state of semi-consciousness. We manhandled his great frame into the largest armchair, where he sat slumped, his head in his hands, a low moan escaping his lips. It was some minutes before he was coherent enough to speak, and when he did, his words were disjointed, tumbling out in a torrent of fear and self-recrimination. "You must forgive me, Mr. Holmes," he said, his voice thick with shame. "I have not been myself. The strain, it has been unendurable." "There is nothing to forgive," Holmes said gently. "Begin at the beginning, Mr. Staunton, and tell us what weighs so heavily upon your conscience. You mentioned your brother, Archie." Henry Staunton shuddered, and for a moment I thought he might swoon again. "Archie. Yes. My brother, Mr. Holmes, is a genius. There's no other word for it. From our boyhood he outshone everyone in intellect. While I was content with sports and the river, Archie lived amongst his books and his chemical apparatus. He took a double first in natural sciences at Cambridge and seemed destined for a brilliant career in research. But there is a flaw in him, a terrible flaw." He paused, swallowing hard. "He is unstable. His ambition is a fire that consumes him. He pushes boundaries not only of science, but of ethics. He believes that the ends justify any means. For months he has been working from his private laboratory at our family home in Surrey, the Cedars. He spoke of a discovery that would revolutionize medicine, an alkaloid compound derived from a rare Amazonian vine, which could, he claimed, temporarily suspend all signs of life without causing permanent harm. Holmes leaned forward, his eyes shining with intense interest. "A powerful cataleptic agent, I presume?" "That is the very term he used," Staunton exclaimed. "He was obsessed. He worked day and night, growing more secretive and erratic. His chief rival, and indeed his only real intellectual peer in this specific field, was a man named Dr. Alistair Abernathy. They had a bitter falling out at the university over some question of professional credit. Last week, Abernathy wrote to Archie threatening to expose what he called his reckless and ungodly experiments to the British Medical Association. Staunton's face, if possible, grew even paler. 3 nights ago, Mr. Holmes, Abernathy came to the Cedars to confront Archie. I was in the library and heard their voices raised in anger from the laboratory in the West Wing. There was the sound of a struggle, a terrible, choked cry, and then silence. He buried his face in his hands, his broad shoulders shaking. I ran to the laboratory. The door was locked. When Archie finally opened it, he looked like a man who had seen a ghost. And on the floor lay Dr. Abernathy. He was not breathing. There was no pulse. A small syringe lay shattered beside him. Archie told me there had been an accident, that in the struggle Abernathy had been injected with a massive dose of the new compound. He was dead, Archie said, and I believed him. Watson, I confess, my own blood ran cold at this narrative. I could see the dreadful tableau, the quiet country house, the secret laboratory, the 2 rivals locked in a bitter quarrel, and the fatal outcome. In a panic, Staunton continued, his voice a mere whisper, we sought to conceal the matter. A scandal would have destroyed the family name and sent my brother to the gallows. Our parents are buried in a private mausoleum at the edge of the estate. It has not been opened for years. Under the cover of darkness, Mr. Holmes, we carried Abernathy's body there. We placed him in an empty sarcophagus and sealed the stone lid. We buried a man without a coffin, without a prayer, like a dog. The sheer horror of the act seemed to overwhelm him anew. He fell silent, his breathing ragged. And now? Holmes prompted softly. Now the guilt is destroying us. Archie has locked himself away, refusing to eat or speak. And I see Abernathy's face every time I close my eyes. But that is not all. Yesterday a note arrived. It was typewritten with no signature. He fumbled in his breast pocket and produced a crumpled piece of paper, which he handed to Holmes. My friend smoothed it out upon the table. It contained a single chilling sentence. I know what lies in the Staunton crypt. 5,000 lon in unmarked bills, or the police will know too. Blackmail, Holmes murmured, examining the paper minutely. Standard stock, machine typed, the final turn of the screw. You are caught between the gallows and the extortionist. A truly terrible position, as you said. What is it you wish me to do, Mr. Staunton? I don't know, the giant cried in despair. I have not the money. The estate is entailed, and I cannot raise such a sum, but I cannot go to the police. Can you find the blackmailer? Can you save my brother? Holmes stood up and began to pace the room. His head sunk upon his chest. The fog had thickened outside, and the Baker Street traffic rumbled past like a distant mournful sea. The case presents several features of interest, he said at last, his voice sharp and incisive once more. The narrative you have given me is that of a man convinced he has helped to conceal a murder. And yet several points strike me as unusual. Your brother, a brilliant chemist, declares a man dead from a compound designed specifically not to be fatal, but to mimic death. A struggle, a shattered syringe. It is all very dramatic, but is it the truth? Or is it merely what your brother, in his own panic, has led you to believe? He stopped his pacing and fixed Henry Staunton with his piercing gaze. Watson and I will accompany you to Surrey on the first train tomorrow morning. I must see this laboratory. I must speak with your brother, and I must, above all, understand the true nature of this mysterious Amazonian alkaloid. Your guilt, Mr. Staunton, is a powerful and destructive thing. Let us first be certain that it is not misplaced. An excursion to Surrey. The journey to Surrey the following morning did little to lift the oppressive atmosphere that had settled upon us. Henry Staunton sat huddled in the corner of the railway carriage, a picture of misery, while the grey, rain-swept countryside flew past the window. Holmes, by contrast, was in a state of quiet excitement, consuming document after document from a bundle of scientific papers he had acquired before our departure, occasionally making a swift annotation in a small notebook. "It is as I suspected, Watson," he remarked, looking up from a German treatise on toxicology. "The study of catalepsy-inducing agents is a field rich with conjecture and fraught with peril. There are numerous accounts from South American explorers of native priests using preparations from the carpi vine to create a death trance. The subjects appear entirely deceased, with no discernible heartbeat or respiration, and yet can be revived, sometimes days later, with the proper antidote. Your client's brother was treading upon very dangerous ground indeed." The Cedars, the Staunton family seat, was a grand but gloomy Jacobean mansion, surrounded by ancient, dripping trees. A nervous housekeeper showed us into a vast, cold drawing-room, informing us that Mr. Archie had not left his rooms for 2 days. "First, Mr. Staunton," said Holmes, "you will show us the laboratory." The West Wing was clearly a later addition to the house. The laboratory was a large, well-lit room, filled with benches, glass retorts, Bunsen burners, and all the paraphernalia of a dedicated chemist. Yet there was an unnerving stillness about the place. A fine layer of dust coated every surface except for one bench, which was unnaturally clean. Holmes moved through the room like a bloodhound on a scent, his sharp eyes darting everywhere. He peered at labels on bottles, sniffed at the contents of beakers, and examined the floorboards with his powerful magnifying lens. "You say the struggle took place here?" he asked, pointing to an open space in the centre of the room. "Yes, Abernathy's body lay just there," Staunton said, his voice trembling as he pointed to a spot by the unnaturally clean bench. The syringe was shattered, you say? And yet I see no shards of glass. Has it been swept up?" "Yes, I believe Archie cleared everything away. He was frantic to remove all trace of the event." "So it would seem," Holmes murmured, his gaze fixed on the floor. He crouched down, his long nose almost touching the polished wood. "Watson, your eyes are younger than mine. Do you see it?" I knelt beside him and saw what his lens had revealed, a tiny, almost invisible scratch upon the floor, and beside it a minuscule dark smear. "It appears to be a spot of dried blood, Holmes." "Precisely. And the scratch is a fresh one. Now, what of this bench?" He ran a gloved finger along its surface. "Scoured clean. Why this bench and no other? And why so thoroughly? So thoroughly, in fact, that our cleaner has failed to remove a faint, lingering odour. Do you recognize it, Watson?" I stooped and inhaled. It was a peculiar, earthy smell, not entirely unpleasant, with a faint undertone of almonds. "I cannot say that I do, Holmes. It is not a standard laboratory chemical with which I am familiar." "Nor I. It is the scent of the raw alkaloid itself, I suspect. Now, the bookshelves." He scanned the serried ranks of scientific volumes. "A comprehensive library. Taylor's Medical Jurisprudence, Christison on Poisons, But there is a gap, a space where a large volume has recently been removed. I wonder which one." He turned his attention back to the centre of the room, his eyes narrowed in thought. A struggle, a fall, a shattered syringe. It is a plausible sequence of events. But the evidence here tells a slightly different story. A story of a meticulous, almost desperate clean-up. A story of a missing book. And the story of a compound that mimics death. "Mr. Staunton, the time has come for us to speak with your brother." The absent scholar. Archie Staunton's rooms were on the second floor. A timid knock from the housekeeper went unanswered. Henry, his face etched with worry, turned the handle and found the door unlocked. The room was in darkness, the heavy curtains drawn tight against the dreary daylight. A stale, unaired smell hung in the atmosphere. The bed had not been slept in. A tray of untouched food lay on a small table, gathering dust. Of Archie Staunton there was no sign. "He's gone!" Henry cried in alarm. "Where could he have gone?" Holmes moved swiftly to the writing desk. A number of papers were scattered across it, covered in complex chemical formulae. In the centre lay a single sheet of paper on which a few lines were scrawled in a frantic, almost illegible hand. Holmes picked it up and read it aloud. "The guilt is too great. The vulture circles. I cannot bear this house of ghosts any longer. Forgive me, Henry. A suicide note," I exclaimed. "Perhaps," said Holmes, studying the paper. "Or perhaps the note of a man fleeing from what he perceives to be certain doom. The vulture, I take it, is our blackmailer. He has made his presence felt. But a man on the run does not simply vanish into thin air. He leaves a trail." His eyes swept the room, missing no detail. He noted the mud on the carpet by the French windows, the type of soil, a chalky clay mixed with leaf mould. He examined the contents of the wastepaper basket, retrieving several crumpled balls of paper, which he carefully smoothed out. They were drafts of the same note, each worded slightly differently. "He was here no more than 12 hours ago," Holmes announced. "He packed no bag. His departure was a sudden, impulsive act. He left through these French windows, which lead to the gardens. The question is, where did he go?" Henry Staunton was distraught. "There is a deep lake on the estate. Oh, Mr. Holmes, surely he would not—" "Your brother is a man of intellect, Mr. Staunton, however disturbed he may be," Holmes interjected. "He is not the type for a desperate physical act like drowning. His instinct would be to seek solitude, a place to hide and think. Is there such a place on the estate? A gamekeeper's cottage? A disused folly? A hunting lodge?" A flicker of recognition crossed Staunton's face. "The old observatory. It is on a hill at the far end of the estate. Our grandfather was a keen amateur astronomer. It has not been used for years, but it is weatherproof. We used to hide there as boys." "Then that is where we shall find him," Holmes declared, his voice ringing with confidence. "Lead the way, Mr. Staunton. There is no time to lose." Our trek across the sodden grounds of the estate was a miserable affair. Rain lashed down, turning the paths to mud. But after a 20-minute walk, we saw it. A small, domed white building, perched on the crest of a wooded hill, looking forlorn and abandoned against the grey sky. The door was bolted from the inside. At Holmes's instruction, Henry Staunton put his great shoulder to the wood. With a splintering crack, the lock gave way, and we stumbled inside. The interior was circular, cluttered with the ghostly shapes of defunct astronomical equipment shrouded in dust sheets. The only light came from a narrow slit window, and there, huddled in a chair beneath the enormous brass telescope, sat a man. He was smaller and slighter than his brother, with the same fine features, but they were ravaged by sleeplessness and despair. His eyes, when he lifted them to look at us, were hollow pits of terror. It was Archie Staunton, the man who believed he was a murderer. Archie's confession. Upon seeing us, Archie Staunton sprang to his feet, a wild, cornered look on his face. He seemed poised to flee, but his brother's massive form blocked the only exit. "Henry, what is the meaning of this? Who are these men?" he demanded, his voice high and strained. "This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Archie," Henry said gently. "He is here to help us." "Help?" Archie gave a bitter, mirthless laugh. "No one can help us. It is over. I'm only waiting for the police to come. Did the vulture send you?" "If by the vulture you mean the man who sent you a typewritten note demanding money, then no, I am not in his employ," Holmes said, stepping forward into the gloomy light. "I am here, Mr. Staunton, to ascertain the truth, a commodity which I suspect has been in very short supply in this house of late." Archie stared at him, bewildered. "The truth? The truth is that I killed Alistair Abernathy. I am a murderer." "Are you?" Holmes's voice was sharp. "Let us examine this truth. You will be good enough to recount for me the precise events of that night. Omit no detail, however trivial it may seem." Hesitantly at first, and then with a rush of frantic words, Archie told his story. It matched his brother's account in most particulars, but with added crucial details. "Abernathy arrived in a rage," he said, pacing the dusty floor. "He accused me of stealing his research, of being a charlatan. He threatened ruin. I told him to leave my house. He refused. He lunged for my research notes on the bench, the culmination of a year's work. I tried to stop him. We struggled." He paused, his hand going to his forehead as if to block out the memory. "The new compound, a refined solution of the alkaloid, was in a hypodermic syringe on the bench. I had been about to test its effects on a rabbit. In the scuffle, the bench was knocked. The syringe flew into the air. It struck him in the neck. A complete accident, I swear it. He gave a single cry, clawed at his throat, and fell to the floor like a stone. I could find no pulse, no breath. The rigidity of death came upon him almost at once. My compound, I had miscalculated its potency. It was a fatal dose." "And so you summoned your brother and disposed of the body?" Holmes prompted. "Yes, in my terror it seemed the only way. To explain an accidental death in my own laboratory, with a poison of my own invention during a furious argument with a known rival, who would believe me? It spelled the gallows. Henry, bless his loyal heart, agreed to help me. We waited until after midnight, carried him to the mausoleum, and sealed him in." "And you then cleaned the laboratory?" "I tried to. I scrubbed the bench where he had lain. I gathered the fragments of the syringe. I could not bear to look at the place. And then the note came. Someone else knew. Someone was watching." He sank back into his chair, the confession having drained him of all strength. "It is my fault, all mine. My ambition, my pride, they have led me to murder." Holmes had listened to the entire narrative without interruption, his chin resting on his hand, his eyes half closed. Now he opened them, and they were shining with an extraordinary light. "Mr. Staunton," he said, his voice quiet but electric with energy, "your account is most illuminating. You are guilty of many things: unethical experimentation, a grotesque disrespect for the dead, and a panicked concealment of what you believe to be a crime. But of one thing I am almost certain: you are not guilty." Archie stared at him blankly. "What are you saying?" "I am saying," Holmes declared, rising to his feet, "that you are no murderer, for the very simple reason that Dr. Alistair Abernathy is not dead." The shadow of the vulture. A stunned silence fell upon the dusty observatory. Henry and Archie Staunton stared at my friend as if he had taken leave of his senses. I myself was so taken aback by this astounding pronouncement that I could not utter a word. "Not dead," Archie whispered, his voice trembling. But it is impossible. I am a man of science. I know the signs of death." "You know the signs of apparent death," Holmes corrected him sharply. "You created a compound designed to mimic death, and when it did precisely that with terrifying efficiency, your nerve failed you. You did not kill Abernathy. You merely succeeded in your experiment beyond your wildest dreams or nightmares. You have induced a profound cataleptic trance." "But for 3 days?" I interjected. "Surely a man would perish without sustenance." "The metabolic processes in such a state are slowed to an almost infinitesimal degree, Watson," Holmes replied. "He would be in a perilous condition, certainly, but not necessarily deceased. The true danger is not starvation, but asphyxiation. You have placed him in a sealed stone sarcophagus." The full horror of what Holmes was suggesting dawned on us all. Henry Staunton gave a choked cry. Archie's face was a mask of disbelief and dawning terror. We had not concealed a corpse. We had buried a living man. "But the blackmailer," Henry cried. "The vulture, as Archie calls him. If Abernathy is not dead, how does this person know what is in the crypt?" "Ah, now we come to the crux of the matter," said Holmes, his expression grim. "Our blackmailer is no fool. He is someone who knows of your research, Mr. Staunton. Someone who understands the true nature of your compound. Someone who witnessed the events of that night, or found evidence of them, and realized the truth when you yourselves were blinded by panic. He does not know you have hidden a body. He knows you have hidden a man, and he is content to let him suffocate while he extorts money from you. It elevates his crime from simple blackmail to attempted murder. This is a very dangerous adversary indeed." He began to pace the narrow confines of the observatory. "Let us reconstruct. The struggle occurs. Abernathy falls. You and your brother, in your terror, remove him. Our vulture, our witness, enters the laboratory later. What does he see? Signs of a struggle, a spot of blood. He sees your research notes, left open in your haste. He understands at once what has occurred. He finds something that you overlooked, some small piece of evidence that implicates him, and removes it. But what?" Holmes paused, his mind working at lightning speed. "The missing book, the toxicology text from the laboratory shelf. What if he was the one who took it? Why? Because it contained a description of the kapi vine and its effects, a subject he did not wish the police, should they become involved, to investigate too closely. And the scoured bench? You scoured it because Abernathy had lain there. But our villain re-scoured it to remove his own fingerprints." "But who, Holmes? Who could it be?" I asked. "It must be a scientific man, Someone known to you and Abernathy? A rival, perhaps? Someone with a grudge?" He turned to Archie. "Think, man. Who else harboured animosity towards you? Who else was familiar with the fringe elements of toxicology?" Archie Staunton looked up, a new and terrible light of understanding in his eyes. "There is one," he whispered. "A man named Silas Maupertuis. He was a research fellow at the college with Abernathy and me. He was dismissed for academic fraud, for falsifying his results. He swore he would have his revenge on us both, for he blamed us for his exposure. He was always dabbling in obscure poisons." "Silas Maupertuis," Holmes repeated, tasting the name. "The description fits. A man with a brilliant but twisted mind, a thirst for revenge and a desperate need for money. He is our vulture. And now, gentlemen, we have no more time to waste in speculation. We have a man to rescue and a villain to trap. Mr. Staunton, you will write a note to Maupertuis. Tell him you have the money and that you will meet him for the handover. The location must be a place of our choosing, and there is only one place that will serve our purpose." Holmes's eyes glittered in the dim light. "You will tell him to meet you at the Staunton Mausoleum, at midnight. The harrowing of the crypt. The hours leading up to midnight were the most tension-filled I have ever endured." A telegram was dispatched to Baker Street and another to Inspector Lestrade at Scotland Yard, with curt and urgent instructions. Henry Staunton, under Holmes's direction, penned the note to Maupertuis and had it delivered by a trusted groom to a London address that Archie provided. Then there was nothing to do but wait as the rain lashed against the windows of the Cedars and the old house groaned under the assault of the wind. Shortly before midnight, the four of us set out, armed with heavy crowbars and lanterns. The storm had passed, but a thick, wet fog had risen from the damp earth, shrouding the landscape in a ghostly white blanket. Our lanterns cast dancing, distorted shadows as we made our way through a dark coppice of yew trees towards the private cemetery. The Staunton Mausoleum was a small, grim granite structure, designed in the neoclassical style, looking like a forgotten temple in the shifting mists. The heavy bronze door was unlocked, but groaned on its hinges as we pushed it open, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead silence of the night. Inside, the air was cold and still, heavy with the scent of stone and decay. A dozen or so stone sarcophagi lined the walls. Henry pointed with a trembling hand to one in the far corner. "That is the one," he whispered. My heart pounded in my chest. Was it possible that a man could still be alive in that stone prison? Or were we about to open a tomb on a fool's errand, only to find the very corpse we expected? Holmes wasted no time. "Gentlemen, to your work," he commanded. It was a grim and ghastly task. The stone lid was immensely heavy, sealed with mortar. But with the two powerful Staunton brothers and myself heaving on the crowbars, we felt the seal begin to crack. With a final, agonized groan of stone on stone, the lid shifted. Holmes held his lantern over the opening. We all peered in, and I felt a wave of nausea and profound pity wash over me. On a bed of velvet lining lay the figure of Dr. Alistair Abernathy. He was pale as marble, his eyes closed, his body rigid. He was, to all appearances, a dead man. "Is he—" Henry began, his voice choked. Holmes did not answer. Instead, he reached into the sarcophagus and placed 2 fingers on Abernathy's neck. He held them there for what seemed an eternity. The only sound was our own ragged breathing. Then Holmes looked up, his face grim in the lantern light. "There is a pulse, so faint it is barely perceptible, but it is there. He lives, Watson. Quick, the smelling salts and the brandy. We must get him out of here." As we began the delicate process of lifting Abernathy's rigid form from his premature tomb, a sound from outside froze our blood. It was the soft crunch of a footstep on the gravel path. "He is here," Holmes whispered, extinguishing his lantern. "On my signal. Be ready." We flattened ourselves into the deepest shadows of the crypt, our hearts hammering against our ribs. The bronze door creaked open slowly, and a figure was silhouetted against the foggy night. He was a tall, thin man, wrapped in a dark cloak. He carried a small, shuttered lantern. He stepped inside, peering into the gloom. "Staunton?" he called out, his voice a low, cultured sneer. "Have you brought my little nest egg? Do not try any tricks. I am armed." It was Silas Maupertuis. At that moment, from the far corner of the crypt, a low moan echoed in the stillness. It came from the lips of Alistair Abernathy, who was beginning to stir under my ministrations. Maupertuis spun around, his lantern beam cutting through the darkness to fall upon the open sarcophagus and the figure we were tending to. For a single frozen moment he stared, his face a mask of utter shock and disbelief. He had come expecting to collect blackmail money over a hidden corpse. Instead, he had found his victim alive. That moment of stunned surprise was all Holmes needed. "Now, Lestrade, now!" he roared. From behind the other sarcophagi, where they had been hiding, Inspector Lestrade and two burly constables sprang forth. Before Maupertuis could even think of reaching for the pistol in his pocket, he was seized and overpowered. The game was up. The vulture was caged. A final explanation. "It was really a very simple chain of reasoning, my dear Watson," remarked Sherlock Holmes, as we sat once more on either side of the crackling fire in our Baker Street rooms 2 days later. The complexity arose not from the facts themselves, but from the fog of guilt and panic through which the Staunton brothers viewed them. He had filled his foulest clay pipe, and the room was thick with the acrid smoke of his shag tobacco, a sure sign that he was in his most didactic mood. From the moment Henry Staunton told his story, I suspected that Abernathy was not dead. A brilliant chemist, like Archie Staunton working on a specific cataleptic agent, would be the last person to mistake its effects for true death, unless his scientific judgment was entirely overwhelmed by fear. His terror and his brother's subsequent guilt were the central facts of the case. At the Cedars, the evidence confirmed my theory. The unnaturally clean bench suggested that more than just the body had been removed. Fingerprints and other traces had been meticulously wiped away, an act of a cunning third party rather than a panicked amateur. The missing toxicology book was the key. Why take that specific book? Because it was the one volume in the library that explained the phenomenon, and our villain could not risk the police, or even the Stauntons themselves, reading it and deducing the truth before his blackmail scheme had run its course. The identity of the blackmailer had to be someone with 3 qualities: scientific knowledge, a motive for revenge against both Archie and Abernathy, and a desperate character. Silas Maupertuis was the only candidate who fit all 3. I surmised that he had come to the Cedars that night to spy on Archie, perhaps hoping to steal research as he had done before. He witnessed the altercation, saw Abernathy fall, and after the brothers had removed the body, he slipped into the laboratory. He understood what had really happened, saw his chance for a double revenge, and took it. He would extort a fortune from the brothers while allowing Abernathy, the man who helped expose him, to perish in the most horrifying manner imaginable. "It is diabolical, Holmes," I said with a shudder. "It is the product of a fine intellect warped by malice," he replied. "My only real concern was for Abernathy's survival. The note to Maupertuis instructing him to meet at the crypt was a calculated risk. It forced his hand and brought him directly to the scene of his crime, where Lestrade could apprehend him with the evidence quite literally rising up before him. I believe his confession was quite complete. Alistair Abernathy, we had learned, was recovering slowly at the Cedars under constant medical care, his mind and body severely traumatized by his ordeal. As for the Staunton brothers, the law could prove nothing against them. They had moved a man they believed to be dead, a grotesque act, but not, in the eyes of the law, a crime. Their punishment would be the lifelong memory of their ghastly mistake. "And so," I said, "another strange and singular case is brought to its conclusion." "Indeed, Watson," said Holmes, leaning back and closing his eyes. "It demonstrates once again that the most bizarre and incredible tales are not to be found in the pages of fiction, but in the dark and tangled corners of the human heart. And now, if you would be so good as to pass me the violin, I believe a little Bach is in order to clear away the last lingering vapours of this Surrey affair."